Hey guys, my name is Eric and today we're going to be talking about the DNT Hydra Thermal Optic. Let's go ahead and roll the intro. Hey guys, thanks for checking out another Hatchet Cast episode, and today I'm going to be talking about the DNT Thermal Optic called the Hydra. It's actually a 3-in-1 optic, and it has a ton of capability for a fraction of the cost. Before we get started, make sure you hit the like and the subscribe button. Also, if you get a chance, go check out one of our channel sponsors, and that is Wetworks. Now, the product spotlight that I have for you guys today from them is the PF7 or the Pathfinder 7 chest rig. Now, this chest rig is a very heavy duty rig where you can carry quite a bit of ammo as well as a ton of molly space to be able to put all kinds of pouches. I actually have some guppy pouches from Lunar Concepts, which you can actually go get at Wiseman Company. But I have all these general purpose pouches. I've got a radio pouch here on the front. And what's really cool about the Pathfinder 7 is the fact that it has loops, so I can put actual retention bands over top of the mags, but it carries 7 magazines, and it's extremely low profile if I want it to be, and also capable of carrying quite a bit of load. So if you look, I have an H harness on the back and a simple waist strap, so you can use standard H harnesses if you have one laying around like a Spiritus or one of our old chest or H harnesses, or if you're running an HX harness from Wiseman Company. Really great harness for this type of rig. I do also have a mat pouch on the other side, so there's Velcro on the inside, so you can add a mat pouch or a dangler if you'd like. What's special about this rig is its simplicity in design and also its comfort. If you would like, there's tons of other equipment at Wetworks. They're a really good nylon gear company. There's a discount code in the description below on this video, as well as on the ticker on the screen. You can save some money on your next purchase. So make sure you go check out Wetworks. Special thanks to them for sponsoring this episode.
Right between them.
Okay, I see him now. Yeah, it's just with the back berm being so hot from the sun, it's
Blended in.
yeah. If you know what you're looking for, doable. But later tonight, like once the sun goes that way and the berms begin to cool down, we'll come back out here and it will be
Okay.
It'll be money.
All right, guys, so real quick disclaimer on this optic specifically. The DNT Thermal Optic was sent to us from DNT Optics, and the immediate thing that really struck me was the cost, and then also the simplicity of the system, which I'll get into when I talk about my experience with the thermal. Now, we've had the thermal for about 2 months now, have about almost 800 rounds on this optic specifically. Those rounds, most of them were from Bone Frog ammunition, so I have the 77 grain Mark 262 clone. It's the Barnes Match Burmers OTM that I was running through this, as well as some ball ammo as well. So I'll jump into the specs at the very beginning. I'll talk about use case of thermals and why I think it's an important thing to have, and then also the features about this that I really liked. So down and dirty on the specs, this is the Hotel Sierra or HS325 Hydra multi-purpose optic. Now, what's great about this system is the price point. It comes in actually right now on sale at $1549.99. If we're looking at a lot of the other competitors out there, you know, a lot of the thermal scopes, even some of the more advanced ones that have all these gizmos and gadgets on them, are going to run you about north of $2,000. So this is around that $1,500 mark. It's like a high quality LPVO price point, or if you're going to buy, you know, a decent optic or a rifle, you're going to be paying the same amount of money. However, this has such a capability that it adds to your collection or to your inventory that I really think that everybody, in reality, every Minuteman should have a thermal. Now, what's great about this is they actually market it to be a standalone scope. It can be a clip-on, so you can actually mount it in front of an LPVO, and also it can be a standalone handheld thermal. So, you know, you have multiple roles that this can fulfill. I like that because it kind of stretches your money and allows you more capability without breaking the bank. Now, What's cool about this is the standalone option and the clip-on option. In the menu settings, you can actually take the reticle off. And also there is an app that is connected with the optics. So you can go to the DNT Optics app. They actually have ballistic calculators, or they have a huge library of all the different projectiles and all the stats on those projectiles. And if you're going to record video or photo, you can do that in this optic and download it through the app. There is no SD card placement on this. It actually records internal memory on the optic itself, and then you can access that through the app on your phone. Now for this optic specifically, you do get a 2-year warranty as well as an extended warranty program. There is a 30-day trial period, so you can return it in 30 days. And also it comes with a free accessory pack, so an 18650 battery and a battery charger. So if this thing, you know, dies, you have sustainment if you're gonna run like a solar charger or a solar battery or a generator. You don't have to rely on perishable batteries. It has a rechargeable function, so that way you can kind of recharge that optic as needed. Now, kind of getting in a little bit the beeps and squeaks about this, it has an 18 MK thermal sensor, so super clear images, essentially what that means. It has the chips inside of it that make it very, very crisp. Also, it's only 13.4 ounces, so it's relatively lightweight, and it has a micro OLED with a display at 60 Hertz. And it does have the one-shot zero, which I'll talk about, and a picture-in-picture feature. So the one-shot zero feature allows you to fire one shot. You can actually see where that shot landed, and then you would freeze the frame and move the reticle to that impact, and then technically it's zeroed. There's a bunch of different zeroing profiles that you can save on this. If you want to take it off of one rifle and have it on another rifle and have the optic zeroed for multiple different guns, you could do that. For me, I personally am just going to have that optic dedicated to one system, or I will remove the optic, use it as a handheld, and then put it back on the rifle. And in fact, my favorite configuration with this as a standalone scope. Now, talking about thermals in terms of, you know, what their capability provides, I think it's pretty obvious about this type of technology being a game changer in the battlefield. And we're seeing it in tons of use cases in Ukraine. There's a ton of, you know, both sides using this to a very effective manner, and they're being mounted on everything, you know, from AKs to, you know, sniper rifles, and also I've even seen some mounted on machine guns. So they're using this in a ton of different ways. A great YouTube channel is actually Falcon Claw. They do a ton of night vision and thermal content where they talk about different things that work, how to hide from thermals, and also how difficult it is to hide from thermals. So for 1,500 bucks, for a relatively, in the thermal world, low price point, you have the ability to PID and find targets very easily. You know, a lot of people are like, hey, what does the thermal world provide me? Thermal in comparison to night vision, what should I get, thermal or night vision? I think that's something where you have to ask yourself the question about what are you trying to move into first, because they're two different capabilities. It's like saying, hey, should I get a Mark 18 or a sniper rifle? Yes, they're both guns, but they provide two different functions. Night vision goggles give you the ability, so whatever you do during the day, you can do them at night, and a lot of those things being admin type things or getting from location to location. Where thermal comes into play is if you're pulling security or you're trying to PID and identify targets and, you know, engage those targets. So this allows you to really pick up heat sources from areas that night vision would really be very difficult to find, fix, and locate those targets. So we're seeing thermal making an impact in the fight in a big way, even in the Middle East. Like the Taliban were just engaging recently. They had an ambush that the Taliban in Afghanistan engaged a bunch of Pakistani soldiers on the border and neutralized a whole bunch of those guys. Like I think it was like 8 dudes in one engagement, and there was one guy with a thermal scope. So these things being effective, it's almost like you got to have one. And I think the one big defeat of thermal is having a thermal and counter scanning or engaging those threats before they can engage you. So kind of beating that horse to death, I think thermals are very important. And, you know, if you can get into one for a lower price point, all the more power to you. So, you know, a lot of the questions that we do get also is like, should I get a clip-on or should I do a standard scope? I mean, there's benefits to both. One, the price point on a clip-on is going to be a little bit more expensive to include the mounting hardware. What's cool about this, if you're mounting it in front of an LPVO, I have mine on an American Defense Manufacturing mount, so it has a quick release, and it has a 30 MOA scope rail that it comes with. So if you have an LPVO at the correct height, you can technically use this as a clip-on. It's a little bit larger in size, but you're paying a lot less money for this in comparison to some of the other competitive brands. So for me, I like to have this as a standalone scope and then just dedicate a rifle to that role. We're seeing that in use, honestly, mostly in Ukraine right now, where there's a guy that has a rifle and it's dedicated with a thermal scope and it doesn't come off. So, you know, if you're going to be that person on that team, if you're going to be a designated marksman, or if you're going to be the sniper on the team within your community, it might be a good idea to maybe have this zeroed to your rifle. So because of price point and the capability that this thing provides, I think having it as a standalone scope is probably the best role that I found for this optic specifically. So there have been multiple thermal companies that have reached out to me about doing some content on their thermal. I'd go through the review process and I'm like, this thing, I just cannot do a review on it. It was just so complicated. A lot of these thermal scopes that are out there on the market have so many features that most of the time you're probably not even gonna use. So like you have laser rangefinders, you have an overt laser, you have, you know, daytime, nighttime, NVG, thermal capability, daytime camera, all of these gizmos and gadgets on it, which increases your price point. And what I found is that it was usually more confusing and it was a bunch of stuff that I didn't need. I just need a thermal scope, right? So the one thing that stuck out to me specifically about the Hydra is the simplicity of the operation and also the simplicity of controls. With the other thermals that I tried working with and trying to do a review on them, is I couldn't even figure out how to zero some of them because there was no instructions, or the instructions were not clear. It was written in like broken Chinese English, like didn't make any sense, and I couldn't find any content out there. Even with the manufacturer, I couldn't find any content on how to actually operate the scope. So the DNT Optics, when they sent me this thing, I was like immediately looking for simplicity of controls and also clear instructions. And so I was able to finally get something that was simple enough where I am not that smart, could dumb it down to my level to be able to figure it out. So if you look at the very front, you have the front here, almost like a night vision device where you adjust that to have your clarity to make your picture clear. Out here, you also have, you know, your eye relief types. You also have your eye relief and your diopter here in the rear. And then it has 4 buttons on top, which is nice. You have your power button, you have your button that has zoom, and it's also your up and down arrow. And in the middle, you have your menu button. And it's very, very simple as far as the manual controls to be able to work this thing. Like, I could understand everything. I was able to zero it. It was the first thermal, I think out of like 4 different thermals that I had tried that were this style, that were way more expensive, by the way. I think the other competitor thermals were like $4,000, $5,000. I ended up sending them back. And they were just so complicated and I could never figure out how to zero them. So getting something where I could zero it and then use it on a platform allowed me to be able to kind of finish the review and see the actual capability of this optic. So the next big thing I was looking for was the capability to engage targets at distance, right? So, you know, if you go to a distance carbine course or you shoot long range, you'll very quickly find out that even things at 400, 500, 600 yards aren't really that far, right? I know it sounds crazy, but you know, as far as in the distance world, it really isn't that much of a stretch. And so what I was looking for is I wanted to be able to have an optic that was going to be able to at least reach out to 600, which means that this had to have the picture clarity or enough data coming in to allow me to make those hits. Now, whether I'm running this thermal or a more expensive thermal, or even night vision devices, it's going to be very difficult for me to PID that unless I'm going to pay thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for a super high-end, you know, government issued only device. But who has the money to do that? So I'm like, I just need to have something that gives me the capability to at least see a heat source and make those hits. And what's really cool is out of Element Training Complex, myself and Dion and some of the other guys that work there, Dion being the general operations. The operations director at Element Training Complex, he actually helped me zero this thing, and we were able to hit targets out at 600 yards, which is fascinating. I was super excited about that because now this turns into a system that allows me to reach out at distance to be able to touch something. And obviously everything in close was even easier to make those hits, and I could PID what was going on. So, you know, having also the picture-in-picture mode allows me to have a smaller, more zoomed-in image while my general image is zoomed out. Some of the other picture-in-picture modes that you see with other manufacturers, and probably DNT has with some of their higher-end models, is that you can have like night vision, and then you can have, or a daytime image, and then you have your thermal image. So it just gives you some more data. But sometimes I just found it was like just too much going on. So I would just remove that and just run the standard image without another picture in the corner. Now, with this, the reticle that I chose, I did choose the mill reticle. I really like that. It has a first focal plane style, so when you zoom all the way out, the reticle gets smaller. You zoom in and you get more data points to be able to make those hits. They have MOA, mill, standard simple dot, simple, mill dot reticles. They have tons of different reticles that you can choose from, different colors, which is really great. So I just went with a very simple mill reticle. Now, something else that was an interesting feature that honestly I wasn't expecting in this optic, specifically because the price point's low, there is a digital leveler. So inside the optic, it will actually show you, and you can actually see it on the screen, to show you if the optic is canted a little bit slightly, and it will give you that leveling indicator. Something else, obviously, that this provides is you can go from white hot to black hot, or black hot to white hot. You have different modes that you can actually, go through. One thing that I actually wish was a little bit different, I do wish that it did have a SD card slot, so that way I could just use an SD card versus it going hard into the scope itself. But it's neither here nor there. It's not that big of a deal. It does have recoil activated picture, so like you can have it set to where when the gun goes off, it immediately starts recording, which is nice because if you forget to start recording, as soon as you shoot, it's going to start recording that. So that is pretty neat. It also has picture capability, but and there's also a microphone on the device. It's not that great, but it's pretty cool. So having the ability to kind of watch those playbacks, or watch if you have an engagement or you're having a hunt, you can actually hear those conversations that you're having with your partner or whatever through the optic itself. Overall, guys, honestly, the big reason why I was super excited about running this optic specifically, one was the capabilities that it has for the price point. I think that things are getting more and more expensive out there, and having a capability that is that is attainable without having to pay thousands and thousands of dollars. Now you can get that capability for a reasonable price point in comparison to the other things that we already get within the gun industry is honestly really refreshing. And also the fact that it was so simple to use. I cannot harp on how painful it has been trying to figure out a good thermal scope to review, and finally DNT Optic had a decent a really good thermal unit with a good price point that was simple, that I could understand, and had clear instructions that I could read in English, and it would tell me exactly what I needed to know. So hopefully, if you are looking for a thermal optic, this is something that you may consider. And I'm really happy that DNT has finally come out with a simple solution at a good price point to make available for the prepared citizen, or for those who want to hunt and have the thermal capability.
Yep, all right. The very first target, 100 yards. Oh, if I loaded the gun? Okay. 100 yards.
100 yards. Center.
All right. 200.
Center.
All right. 300.
Is it easy to see?
Yep. 400.
100 yards. Hit.
All right. 500.
500. Hit. Impact.
All right. And 600. She refreshed on me.
It's a fast refresh, though. What do you think?
It is. Pretty quick.
You able to see SWAT?
I needed this. I needed to refocus.
Not gonna lie, this optic has made me excited since today.
Yeah, I'm pretty impressed with it.
You're hitting. Hitting. You can see it?
Barely.
Yeah.
It's just because I know where the target is in reference to the berm.
Right. You think it's just time of day with the sun and...
Yeah, just because with the sun going east to west, it's heating up the target and the front of the berm at the same time. That's why, like, when we were on the 6, those targets are facing north to south, and so when the sun comes by, it's only heating the side of the berm, not the back of the berm.
Yeah.
So, like, if we came out here tonight once the sun went away, these targets would absolutely pop.
Okay.
Or we'll try this thermal target paint that
Yeah.
just came out and see how that goes.
Cool.
But zero process on it, super simple.
So what did you end up doing?
So there's an X and Y axis. You just go down to the menu. There's an X and Y axis. You hold where you were holding at, and then you just bump the reticle over to where the bullet impact is, and then that's your one-shot zero.
Dude, like I've tried other brands, and the zero process, either the instructions don't exist online,
Yeah.
or it is extremely confusing and so hard to understand.
Well, this one wasn't too bad. I've never looked at the manual.
Yeah.
I just came out here, sat down with you, and toyed with it for a minute, and I think the user interface on here is very like user friendly.
I would agree. Yeah.
No, that's nice. It's cool.
Thermal and night vision and those types of things, which are high price point, it's interesting how in the industry, it's such an amazing industry to be in, an amazing community, but there's also some toxicity that's within our industry. And you know, I've even seen it, you probably have also seen it as well, where you'll see someone that has some really high-end Gucci gear. They might be running it, most likely not, but they will insult other people that don't have the same type of equipment, or you know, might have a lower income bracket. So they'll be like, hey, we're just flexing on the pores and all this type of stuff. And it's fun and games, I get it. But you know, for us as good and prepared citizens, we should be standing by our brothers in our community and encouraging them and helping them, you know, find capabilities that are achievable and attainable without having to break the bank. And also not think so highly of ourselves all the time. You know, I've always dealt with ego, I've always dealt with pride, and that's something that I constantly have to just squash it. And I was reading in Romans chapter 12 when Paul is talking to the Roman church about what it means to be a servant, a servant who follows the Lord. And I thought it was really interesting, and so I wanted to share that with you. And chapter 12, verse 9, love must be sincere. Hate what is evil and cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Like, it's fascinating is the world says now, hey, you need to love what's evil and hate what's good, otherwise you're a bigot. Or, you know, don't worry about other people, just worry about yourself. And it's so funny how the world will tell you the opposite of what God is trying to teach us and how we should, you know, live our lives. And I love the fact it says, be devoted to one another in love, honor one another above yourselves. There's another version that actually says, try to outdo one another in serving other people, like trying to, you know, serve your friends more than they can serve you. You know, like how much better would the world be if we all had that type of attitude, or even the industry be if we had that kind of an attitude? Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor, serving the Lord, be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, and faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need and practice hospitality. This one's a good one. Bless those who persecute you, and bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice, and mourn with those who mourn. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. And you know what's fascinating is when that hospitable part, when's the last time you had somebody over your house or just met someone who's like, hey, I think they might need a meal. Or I think that, you know, I'm at work and that guy, my coworker that I've never really talked to, I see him all the time and you know, he's sitting alone. Be hospitable. Be that person that's willing to share and break bread with somebody. And especially with someone who is maybe going through a hard time. And it's fascinating because in this generation, we as men are so good at just compartmentalizing, isolating that feeling and shoving it down and just pretending like it doesn't exist. And it always comes to the surface sooner or later. And so there are people who are probably in your friend group or in your family that are going through an absolutely horrible time, and they're just suffering alone. And that's why we see such an epidemic of people who are taking their own lives or going into depression or having substance abuse, because they are, you know, living through hell, but they can't talk about it, or they don't feel like they can talk about it, or don't have anybody to connect with. So be that shining light, be that asset to the people in your life. Those people were put in your life for a reason, so that way you could be the one that God can use to reach them and to bring them hope. And so if you're going through a hard time or you're going through a rough season, email me at team@barrelhatchet.com. I'd love to pray for you. We just did a prayer request post on YouTube. We're gonna be doing another one. So if you have a prayer request, you can comment on those prayer request posts or also on this video. And if you're a believer and you're a Christian and you are striving to be a servant and outdo others in serving others, I ask that you would just look at some of those comments and pick one or two, and just pray for that person throughout your day. And then, you know, go back on another day and find another comment, another person that could use prayer. Prayer should always be our first response, not our last resort. So guys, let's look out for each other. Let's continue to train to be the eternal asset. My name is Eric, and I'll see you on the next one.